So normally when I do the script writing, here's a little behind the scenes for you guys. I like to break it up into like chapters, I guess.
Yes.
And I titled them, but you're the only person who ever sees these
Yes,
titles.
and I appreciate them very much. You often make me chuckle with them.
They usually reflect how I'm feeling about the topic. So the majority of this episode is titled Rank Ass Richard.
Which is very, very appropriate. Here we are, 3 episodes in. You have informed me we're nowhere near the end.
No, and you know what? I knew this wasn't going to be a small series because you cannot make Richard Ramirez a small series and still include everything. I'd say maybe we're at the halfway point.
Ooh.
Maybe towards the end of the halfway point. We're somewhere around there.
This could be one of the longer series we've done.
It will be, I'd say.
And some of the longer ones we've done, I think, was Pee-wee Gaskins. He was 5, I think.
No, Pee-wee was 2.
Oh, really? Only that many?
Yeah, because we were like fresh. Manson was...
That was 5. Titanic
was 4.
Yeah.
So yeah.
This could be the longest one yet.
Let's go.
Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Dina. Welcome to the Grim Curriculum.
We last left off with Gil Carrillo talking to one of the victims of Richard Ramirez. To him, the survival of Maria Hernandez just didn't make sense. Despite what the other police officers may have thought, he knew that there was clearly a serial killer on the loose, and that fact terrified him.
What made the entire situation even scarier was that this monster was willing to prey on just about anyone. There was no victim type. Gil understood that this would make it even more difficult to catch him.
Clearly, the priority was to bring him to justice before he could hurt anyone else, but unfortunately, this would not be the case.
This week, we're going to be exploring even more of the rampage that Richard Ramirez was putting Los Angeles through.
And he really was. And as you said, this series would be shorter, but this man just would not stop killing people.
Yeah, and it's not, you know, I've heard a lot of documentaries or other podcasts and things like that, and they really just kind of yada, yada, yada. Like, this week, he killed 6 people, you know, like that kind of thing. And I don't think that's right. And that's one of the reasons why this series is going to be so long.
Absolutely. So, beginning off with rank ass Richard. It had only been 18 days since Ricky had killed Vincent and Maxine Zazera. To him, killing was only getting easier. More importantly, he wasn't getting caught. By now, he felt not only invincible, but he knew he didn't want to stop.
On April 14th, 1985, he woke up and left the Cecil Hotel. He then had breakfast and played pool. The money he had stolen from the Zazaras gave him enough to gamble and buy all the drugs that he wanted. Soon after, he left the pool hall and went to watch an adult movie at a local theater, which, okay.
What a productive morning.
He's girl bossing.
Getting stuff done.
You know, to me, because this is not a generational thing for us, the concept of going to a theater filled with other people and watching a pornographic film, I've never understood that.
I don't know if it's just, not a cultural thing for us. I know, like, obviously I'm aware that there are, like, adult theaters out there. But to me, it's kind of like one of those things. I'm very, like, innocent in some ways. Like, when we first moved to Edmonton to start going to, like, college and stuff, I made friends at college. And one of my really good friends to this day, he was quite a bit older than us, and he had known the city for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. So when we would be, like, out and about and visiting downtown, he'd be like, oh, yeah, see that massage parlor? Yeah, that's a rub and tug. And I'd be like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't, I don't know, I just don't notice things like that.
But at least that's between the privacy of you and your masseuse.
That's true. Like, you're not in a room full of, like, 100 other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, it's not for me. It's not for me. When he was finished with his very productive morning, he stole a vehicle and began cruising through different communities. He shut off the engine and pulled over at Trumbauer Avenue. As he did, he saw Lonnie Dempster delivering the newspaper.
Lonnie had a second job as a security guard and had been trained to gauge whether or not someone was to be deemed suspicious. As soon as she saw Richard, she knew that he was up to no good.
She would later report that Richard
had very scary eyes.
Yes, he does. Not fazed by this, Richard left the vehicle and stopped in front of the house of 66-year-old William Doy and his 56-year-old wife, Lillian. Bill had recently retired. The couple had just paid for a down payment on a van and had plans to travel across the country together. Bill had survived a heart attack just a few years prior.
Lillian had also lived through a crippling stroke. She had a hard time speaking and got around by using a wheelchair. Despite their difficulties, the two were eager for their adventure.
Prior to choosing this home, Richard had sold his gun to a fence. He understood that the police were likely looking for the weapon and upgraded it to a silver-plated .22. In the backyard, he found a pair of locked sliding glass doors that had been fitted with alarms. As he looked around, he saw a window that was open. He climbed into a bathroom.
He got low to the ground and began moving through the house. He saw Lillian sleeping in bed next to her wheelchair. The couple had begun sleeping in different rooms due to her health issues.
As he approached the bedroom of Bill, he raised his gun and chambered it. The click it made woke Bill instantly. He was a war veteran, and because of this, was a naturally light sleeper.
Bill was also very concerned about their security and kept various guns around the house. He reached into his nightstand for his 9mm. As he did, Richard shot him in the head, hitting his upper lip and ripping through his tongue.
Ugh. The sound woke Lillian. She heard her husband pleading to someone but was too afraid to move. She heard Richard beating her husband. When he was done, he went to Lillian and began hitting her, saying,
"Shut up or I'll kill you, bitch."
Which is now again becoming this pattern. He says this a lot to his victims. What Richard didn't realize was that Bill still had some fight left in him. He came to the aid of his wife, but was knocked unconscious.
As he laid there, Richard began sexually assaulting Lillian. When he was finished, he kissed her, stole some items, disabled the phone, and placed her in thumb cuffs. Then he left.
Bill awoke once again. He called 911 and said,
"Help. Please help me."
He then passed out again. The operator dispatched all emergency personnel. Bill was able to call 911 one more time before they arrived. Meanwhile, Lillian got one of her thumbs out of the cuffs and was left bleeding.
At 5:04 a.m., Fire Captain Norman Case and 3 firefighters pulled up to the front of the home. When they arrived, they saw Lillian trying to speak while the cuffs hung from her left hand. She pointed to her husband, who was covered in a pool of blood.
Due to her stroke, Lillian struggled to tell the officers what had happened. She managed to say that a tall man in all black with bad teeth showed up with a gun.
Bill arrived at the hospital at 5:13 a.m., where it was deemed that he had been shot. 16 minutes later, he was pronounced dead.
I think, honestly, he was able to hold on until he knew that his wife was safe.
Yeah.
Because that is brutal. A little over an hour later, Detective Paul Torres arrived to the scene. He was surprised when he got the call because of how few homicides happened in the area. When he investigated the scene, he found a shoe print belonging to an Avia sneaker. As he looked around further, he found a few more belonging to the very same shoe.
Gil Carrillo received a call at 8:30 a.m. The Monterey Park police had phoned the sheriff's office and asked for him to come out specifically. When he arrived, he was surprised by the reaction of Paul Torres, who looked at him and said,
"Well, we don't need your help. Thanks anyway." Paul? My guy?
Well, no one respects Gil at this point.
That's very true. He's just some young guy with big ideas that no one seems to believe.
Gil asked him if this crime was possibly connected to what he was investigating and told him to do his best to preserve his evidence. Despite all of this, he was still asked to leave. He was not told about the thumb cuffs, and if he had been, he would have possibly made the connection to this and the Zazzara case.
Eventually, Gil and Frank were made aware of what had really happened. They were also informed of the shoe print. The same one had also been taken from a child abduction.
Something important to remember when it comes to the Richard Ramirez story is that there were many victims like Maria Hernandez that were left alive.
One of those was 6-year-old Anastasia Hronis. She woke up in the middle of the night to Richard Ramirez grabbing her through her bedroom window. About this, she said,
"I was 6, and my first memory of that night was the window opening and being woken up and then being ushered out of the window and being carried. It kind of hurts me to say that there was a familiarity. He reminded me of a family member, and I was half asleep." I didn't know what was going on, so I thought, well, that's okay. I know him, so I guess I'm going to be okay.
To this day, she doesn't remember knowing where they were headed or what the car even looked like. She does know that at one point, he told her to open the glove compartment. When she did, she saw a gun.
Soon after, she heard dogs barking and was being put into a duffel bag. She was taken to an apartment that she described as awful, slimy, and dingy, and the windows were covered.
Richard Ramirez sexually assaulted her over the course of the night while playing Madonna repeatedly. That part, honestly, I have not listened to Madonna the same way since I heard that years ago.
Yeah.
That would be so triggering decades down the line. You know, like you could be in the grocery store having a great day, and then suddenly Madonna comes on the radio, and you're like, fuck sakes, PTSD all over again.
It kind of reminds me of Paul Bernardo.
Oh,
telling his victims that he left alive to say Merry Christmas, so they would always associate Christmas with him.
Exactly.
Because you're right. I mean, you're going to hear Madonna anywhere.
Yep. And usually, and it's so twisted because you think of Madonna and it's like, yeah, like whatever pop song.
Yeah.
She's a 6-year-old kid. She's probably heard Madonna on the radio. She's maybe heard her mom singing along or whatever. And then suddenly this very normal, innocuous thing is completely twisted into something horrible.
When he was finished, he put her back into the bag and took her to the car. He drove her to a gas station and told her to call 911 and ask for her family to take her home.
Multiple child kidnappings shared similarities around that time. Another 6-year-old girl was taken from school, assaulted, and abandoned. Less than a month later, a 9-year-old boy was taken from his bedroom and suffered the same fate.
Something about being taken from your bedroom.
Well, that's the place you're just supposed to be so safe, right? Like, that's your sanctuary. And when you're a kid, it's so important to know that you're safe. And being asleep, you're at your most vulnerable, right? And then he just breaks in, and not even breaks in, sometimes reaches in through an open window.
Yeah, and I mean, as a kid, you know, you grow up, you're having nightmares. You're scared of the thing under your bed or in your closet, and it turns out that there is a monster there, and it's Richard Ramirez.
Yeah, who's very real.
2 weeks after that, an 8-year-old girl was taken from her bed. She was victimized in a vehicle and then left on her own.
We can't confirm that this was the work of Richard Ramirez. However, there were a lot of similarities between the descriptions that the children made. It didn't take long for investigators to realize that everything they had said looked just like the sketches of the man that they were looking for.
But it would be a while before they found him.
It was now May 29th, 1985, and the investigation was in its 73rd day. 83-year-old Mabel Bell and her 81-year-old sister, Florence Lang, lived on the outskirts of the Monrivia area in an isolated house. Mabel, or Ma as she liked to be called, took care of Florence, who was severely disabled. The sisters were asleep in their bedrooms when Richard approached the home in a stolen Mercedes.
He would later say that he chose this house because his inner voice told him to. He put on some gloves and approached the front door. When he was inside, he looked around and became angry because he couldn't find anything of value.
When he saw Florence, he quickly realized that she was disabled, so he moved on to Ma's room. He had hoped for a house full of valuable items and young women. This was the opposite of his expectations, and it made him even more upset.
Richard went to the kitchen to find a knife. When he couldn't find one that was sharp enough, he grabbed a hammer and went back to Florence's room. Without hesitation, he began hitting her head with it. He used the cord of a nearby alarm clock to tie her hands behind her back.
Then he made his way over to Ma. He hit her in the head and began demanding money and jewelry. When she told him she didn't have either, he struck her again. He turned the lights on and bound her ankles with electrical tape.
He ripped the cord from her clock and used it to electrocute her repeatedly. When he was finished, he returned to Florence and sexually assaulted her multiple times. This whole thing with the shocking the victims.
Don't like that. Well, I don't like any of it,
No,
but that's so bad.
But he's coming up with new stuff every time.
Yes, it's like, what can I do to inflict as much pain and misery and horror as I possibly can? He's very much improvising on the spot, for sure. But Richard wasn't done. He used red lipstick that he found to draw a pentagram on Ma's thigh and the wall over her head. He then jumped back into his car and went home.
That following night, he returned to their house and saw that they were exactly where he had left them. Richard then moved on to a nearby home. The windows were closed and locked, but he saw a doggy door and used it to enter.
When I was a kid, I always thought the idea of a doggy door was so cool.
Oh, me too.
I was like, I love this. They can just come and go as they want. This
Mhm.
is awesome. And then I started hearing about like, what's his name? We covered him. He used a combat knife and there was a dog involved. Oh my God.
Danny Rollins?
Yes. Jesus Christ. Ever since I knew that Danny Rollins broke into someone's house using a doggy door, that was it for me. I was like, no, we're never doing that.
Mhm.
Not a good idea. Even the ones where they lock unless the dog is near them, like there's like a thing on the collar.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, because then it's like you're incentivized to hurt my dog,
Yeah.
or at the very least steal its collar.
Yeah.
Like I don't like any of that.
Doggy
No,
doors, it's not a
sorry,
thing that
guys.
should be a thing anymore.
No doggy doors for us, thank you.
Using a small light, he made his way to a bedroom where he saw 42-year-old Carol Kyle. He crawled up on top of her body.
Ugh.
By now, the tips that his Uncle Mike had given him had come in handy more times than he could count. He would later say that he viewed these nights as a secretive military mission.
He shined the light in her face and pushed her. He then yelled,
"Wake up, bitch, and don't scream or I'll kill you. Don't make a fucking sound."
He then held a gun to her head and asked if anyone else was in the house. She told him that her 11-year-old was asleep in the other room. Richard then pulled her out of the bed and marched her to where her son was sleeping.
There's one point in the book, the Night Stalker book, where it's talking about her. And she says there's a son. And then at one point she says, like, I don't want you to hurt me or my children. And he says, children?
Oh no.
And she says, he's like, what do you mean children? Do you have more than one child? And she says, I have a 16-year-old daughter. And he says, well, where the fuck is she? And she's like, well, she's away at a sleepover.
Oh.
And he laughs and he says, well, maybe I'll just wait for her to come home too.
No.
And she's like, I know what you're going to do to my daughter. Like, I will do anything to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Well, the unfortunate part is that we obviously know that men and women, children, were not safe from him regardless of gender. But I can understand this mom being like, okay, well, my daughter's probably going to be the target, so my son would probably be safe. And it's like, unfortunately, that we do not know either.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like Richard would say that, like, when he broke into these houses, he was hoping to find young women.
Yeah.
But if he didn't, that was fine too. He would still kill anybody.
Yeah, he was happy to just move on from that to whatever. Oh my God. At first, Richard wanted to burst into the room with her, but he remembered what had happened with Maxine Zazera. He didn't want his victim to have a chance to fight back.
He told Carol to lay on the floor and threatened to kill her. Then he ran into the room and woke the boy up with a gun to his head.
Carol ran in after him and shielded her son with her body. He then made the two of them get into a closet as he tore their home apart looking for something to steal. When Richard returned, he took Carol with him and left her son behind.
He dragged her back to the bedroom by her hair and continued demanding valuables. He demanded that she not look back at him, but she still snuck a peek and would later remember the lines on his face and his high cheekbones.
She then led him to a dresser where she kept her jewelry box. She asked him if he would leave if she gave him something valuable.
He laughed and said yes.
Carol took off her necklace. It was a diamond that she wore on a thin gold chain. The diamond had been part of her wedding ring. She had repurposed it a few years after her husband had been killed.
He then threw her to the bed and sexually assaulted her. Richard continued to search the house, but would periodically return to assault her multiple times.
When he finished, he went to the kitchen to find some food and something to drink. Richard then went back to Carol and disgustingly told her that for her age, she wasn't too bad sexually, and then had the audacity to begin asking for directions on how to get back to the freeway.
She would later report that it seemed as if he was confused about where he was. He told her,
"You're lucky I'm letting you live. I've killed a lot of people, you know?" As if this woman hasn't been through enough.
Yeah.
Like, just the absolute way he toys with his victims is disgusting.
He, not to get too graphic, basically sexually assaulted her in every way possible. Like, 7 or 8.
Like, I don't even know how, like, you survive something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
Threatened to kill her once again if she looked at him and brought her son back into the room with her, and then he left.
Her son was able to reach the phone and 911 was called. Officer Roger Cervenka arrived at the home at 6:05 a.m. As he approached, he saw Carol's son waving at him through the bedroom window. The two were found just as Richard had left them. The day after the attack, an LAPD sketch artist worked with Carol to get a composite of her attacker.
She did her best, but the sketch did not come out the way that she wanted. Due to this, it did not resemble the man who attacked Maria Hernandez.
The following day, Ma Bell's gardener arrived at their home. He rang the bell, but there was no answer. He returned once again on June 1st and began getting concerned, and so he entered the home.
He found Florence laying on her bed just as Richard had left her 58 hours earlier. She was laying there with her eyes still open. When he saw the pentagrams, he ran out of the house and began to pray. Florence would miraculously survive.
I don't know how they went through what they went through and then were undiscovered for as long as they were and still, like, lived through it, or at least Florence did.
And I mean, she was the one who was disabled. And
Yeah.
that in itself, I mean, she's already not doing great. She
No.
wasn't in good health. And the fact that she was there for that long and, like, she barely survived.
Yeah, no,
but
don't
she
get me wrong.
survived.
Totally. When the investigators arrived, there were no avia shoe prints found. They also weren't able to locate a gun or a knife. The crime, once again, was not linked to Richard Ramirez.
Even Gil didn't think that there was a connection. The man he was looking for had previously only used specific weapons, and he never left behind a pentagram.
By early June, Richard was out and ready to find his next victim. This time, he came upon the home of John and Susan Rodriguez. John was a Los Angeles sheriff's deputy.
When Richard saw the house, he thought it looked like a good place to start. He didn't realize that he was less than a kilometer away from the Zazara's home. The couple were awakened by the sound of a window opening. Richard heard them talking and ran off.
At 4 a.m., Gil Carrillo got a call from a deputy who told him that they had found another avia shoe print. His excitement turned into shock when he learned that the almost victim was a sheriff's deputy.
And Gil had grown up in this area. So to him, this case was becoming even more personal.
As he was driving down the freeway, Richard was stopped by an LAPD officer on a motorcycle. Richard gave him a fake name, and the officer left him alone for a moment while he wrote out a ticket.
In his mind, his identity being revealed would mean that he would die, so he made a plan to run. As the officer returned, he said,
"Hey, you're not that guy killing people in their homes, are you?"
Richard responded,
"No way, man. When are you guys gonna catch that motherfucker?"
There's a whole conversation in the book where the cop's like, man, we're trying. And Richard's like, I got a wife, man. Like, I'm worried.
Fucking hell. Like, two ships not even two ships passing in the night. Two ships, like, yelling at each other as
yeah,
they, like...
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god.
The officer once again returned to his motorcycle. Richard said a prayer to Satan and drew a pentagram, and then he took off running.
The officer would later find a black leather wallet containing hundreds of dollars in cash, along with an appointment card for a dentist named Dr. Peter Lang. The car was later towed to a police lot where it would remain for most of the summer.
Not long after that, Frank and Gil sat down and had a conversation about the case. They vowed that they would catch the killer and officially became partners.
The next day, Gil and Frank were called to the home of Patty Elaine Higgins. She was a 28-year-old teacher who lived in the Arcadia area.
Her body was discovered by Don Bonelli, the foreman of a nearby construction site. He had spoken to her not long beforehand. Patty hadn't shown up to work that day, and Don had heard her phone ringing nonstop. He approached the home and saw that one of her windows was broken.
When he entered the house, he saw that it had been completely ransacked. He found her on the bathroom floor. Her throat had been slashed so viciously, she was almost decapitated.
Once again, there were no shoe prints or evidence that a .22 revolver was used. However, the brutality of the attack led Gil and Frank to believe that this was the man that they were after. Unfortunately, whoever he was, he knew how to be stealthy and understood exactly what to do to not get caught.
They've kind of come to the realization now that the MO of whoever this person is that he does not have an MO.
Yes.
And so no matter what crime was, as long as it was sufficiently violent, they were like, we kind of have no choice but to tie it to this person at the moment, because what other choice do we have?
Exactly.
By July 2nd, Richard had returned to the Arcadia area. In his mind, the police would never expect him to strike in the same place again. He stopped at the home of 75-year-old Mary Louise Cannon. When Richard realized he was at the home of another senior citizen, he once again became enraged that there would not be any young women for him to assault.
As Mary lay in her bed, Richard hit her with a nearby lamp. He then beat and choked her until she was unconscious. Finally, he ended her life by stabbing her with a large butcher knife.
As he always did, Richard began looking for things to steal. He took what he could and drove straight to his fence. The moment Frank and Gil saw the crime scene, they knew it had been done by the same man who killed Patty Higgins.
The victims were different, yes, but the wounds were almost identical.
For the first time in the entire investigation, Frank was 100% convinced that they really did have a serial killer on their hands.
Like we mentioned before, Frank had worked the Hillside Strangler case. He knew that this man was even more dangerous than them because his victims could be literally anyone.
He also understood that their killer was starting to get sloppy. This time, he had left behind evidence. Multiple Avia shoe prints were found, along with the butcher knife that was still covered in his victim's blood.
When they arrived back at the sheriff's office, they were informed that the footprints matched the other ones that had been located. They met with Bob Grimm, and Frank told him that Gil had been correct. He explained the connection of the shoe prints, matching descriptions, bad teeth, and thumb cuffs.
And Frank points out in the documentary of like the 18 years or something that he had been on, or in the detective bureau, the homicide bureau, he had never seen someone use thumb cuffs before.
Yeah.
He was like, what the hell are those?
Yeah.
Like, that's fucking weird.
It
basically.
is, yeah.
And now they have 2 victims with thumb cuffs?
What are the odds?
What are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. Bob Grimm now fully agreed with their theory and gave them various teams to help solve the case. One group would read teletypes and share the composite sketch. Another would speak with the designer of the Avia shoe. They also understood the importance of all jurisdictions communicating and began speaking to them to ensure information could be quickly and effectively passed around.
3 days after the murder of Mary Cannon, Richard returned to Arcadia. Once again, he reasoned that police would not expect him to strike here, now for a 3rd time.
He then drove to nearby Sierra Madre. Richard had purchased a police scanner and began listening to it when he heard that multiple people had called in reports of a man prowling the area. He had seen all the news reports about himself and would watch them proudly. The press had begun calling him the Valley Intruder.
So this is our first name.
Yep.
That he was given, because he wasn't the Night Stalker originally.
He was Valley Intruder, and very briefly, he was the Screen Door Killer.
Yes, which, I mean...
It's a terrible name.
I never like giving serial killers, like, quote-unquote cool names, because they fucking don't deserve it, but, like, Screen Door Killer is lame AF.
It is. It's pretty bad.
As Richard drove, he found himself in a wealthy area again, and knew that this is where he could find high-priced items to fence. When he found a house that he liked, he approached the back door, only to find it locked.
He went around the house and tried the front door. To his surprise, it opened. He took out his .22 and slowly entered the home of Mr. and Mrs. Steve Bennett and their 2 children, Whitney, 16 years old, and James, who was 18.
Steve and his wife had gone out to watch a 4th of July fireworks display. When they returned, they had forgotten to lock the door. By 12:15 a.m., the couple was fast asleep. Whitney had gone out to celebrate with some friends. She arrived back at the house around 1 a.m. Her father had left her a note, and she wrote a reply to him on it. Then she washed up and went to bed.
Meanwhile, Richard was still in the house. He entered her room and saw that she was sleeping. He then began stealing her jewelry. Richard had already decided that Whitney was the person he wanted most in the home and that using a gun would wake up the rest of the family.
Richard then left the house and grabbed a tire iron from his car. As he was returning to the home, he saw a police car driving down the block, and so he hid behind a bush.
As the car drove past him, he returned to the house. Richard then walked to her bedroom again and began striking her with a tire iron. When he was certain she was unconscious, he went to the kitchen and found a suitable knife.
This whole thing is crazy, but the fact that he's already in the house when Whitney gets home, and she's being quiet because everyone else in the house is asleep, but she still takes the time to like get ready for bed, wash her face, then get into bed and take the time to fall asleep while he's still in the house. Yeah. Oh my God. Just utter. And then he leaves the house, comes back in the house, and he's still like, no one is aware that he's there.
It's all the stuff Mike taught him.
Oh my God, the stealth thing, horrible. As he returned to the bedroom, he decided that he wanted to sexually assault her. However, he knew that if she woke up, she would start screaming and alert the rest of the house. Richard knew he had to kill her first.
This part's weird.
Yeah.
This is from Richard. He would later say that he decided to strangle her with a telephone cord. As he was doing this, he saw blue sparks coming from it, which he determined was her soul leaving her body. He let go because this was something that had never happened before, and it scared him.
So much so that he left. In his mind, Christ had interceded and saved Whitney's life.
All she would later remember was going to bed. She knew that she was lucky to be alive, but not what had almost happened to her.
And that, my friends, is where we will pick up next week for part 4 of Richard Ramirez, The Night Stalker.
Whew. It's a horror movie.
Oh my God.
I can see, the more that we talk about guys like Ramirez, Richard Chase, Danny Rawlings, I can see where the inspiration comes from.
For the fictional horror movie killers. It's so much scarier because it's so unpredictable. And in Whitney's case, as much as she remembered nothing of the incident, so she wasn't able to give a description or anything, right? In her case, that's fine. I think it's just better that she doesn't remember anything.
Of course it is, yeah.
The silver lining, as much as it's a very dark silver lining, is that she was not aware of him. She was unconscious before he did what he did to her, and he was gone before she was aware. Was she in absolutely horrific condition?
Of course,
yes.
Yeah.
Horrible. Oh my God, she should never have gone through that. But she doesn't remember, and I think that is truly for the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God. This man is just such a fucking monster.
Just remember he's dead.
Dead. D-E-A-D.
And remember how you feel right now, all of you listening, when we talk about his time in jail and his trials and all the attention that he got and all the women who were just obsessed with him. Because this is the person that they idolized. And that to me will never make sense.
No, inexcusable. There is nothing that you could say that would ever flip my mind on this. Like,
no,
absolutely not. There's just no way my brain wraps itself around that.
No.
Because he's disgusting. Dead and disgusting. Rank Ricky.
Yep.
Anyhow.
But what is not rank is our Patreon, dear listeners.
It smells like daisies.
It does. Check it out. The free tier, you get access to our Twitch VODs. You get early episode reveals. For the paid tiers, we have video versions of all of the episodes, along with our Discord and a bunch of extra content. It's super fun. Our top tier, the Grim VIPs, they get a shout out at the end of every episode, so take it away.
The wonderful, splendiferous Lisa, Mayhem Mudkip, Kev Cords, Nova, Bob, Brian, Steven Centauri, Paranoid Pop Rocks, Atlantean Jedi, and the wonderful Judy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/thegrimcurriculum. We've been streaming a little more recently.
Yeah.
We started out playing some of The Forest, which was hectic and fun and very chaotic. But we are also starting our farm on Stardew Valley.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. I'm very excited. So stay tuned for the next stream. Come hang out if you'd like. We'd love to see you there in chat.
Thank you all so much for listening. This has been The Grim Curriculum.
Did you know the average human body contains enough carbon to make about 9,000 pencils worth? Huh. That's a lot of carbon.
That's a lot of pencils.
It is.
Bye.